The rain came down in sheets over Riverbend, Illinois, turning the quiet streets into glistening mirrors of streetlights and neon signs. Daniel Hawthorne gripped the steering wheel of his old Ford pickup, the kind of truck that looked like it belonged to a carpenter rather than the man who once commanded boardrooms on Wall Street. Beside him, 10-year-old Lucas pressed his forehead against the passenger window, watching the droplets race each other down the glass. "Are we almost there, Dad?" Lucas asked, voice soft but excited. 5 more minutes, Daniel replied, glancing at his son. The boy's dark hair was still damp from the earlier downpour, and his eyes, Claire's eyes, shone with the kind of wonder only children could carry into places meant for pain. They were heading to the newest branch of Hawthorne Children's Hope, the 21st hospital in the network Daniel had built from the ashes of his former life. Tomorrow morning, the ribbon would be cut, the doors would open, and another group of children with cancer, rare blood disorders, and heart conditions no insurance company wanted to touch would receive care without a single bill ever crossing their parents' desks. But tonight Daniel wasn't arriving as the founder, the billionaire, or the man whose name appeared in hushed tones on Forbes lists he no longer read. Tonight he was just Dad taking his son to see where I work. Lucas shifted in his seat, hugging the worn teddy bear he still carried everywhere. "Will there be kids my age?" probably Daniel said. "Some older, some younger. They're all fighters like you were when you were little." Lucas nodded solemnly. He didn't remember much of those early years. The hospital smells, the beeping machines, the way his mother's hand had grown colder in Daniel's grip. But he knew the stories. He knew his mother had left them too soon, and that his father had promised her something in the quiet of a Chicago emergency room 7 years ago. Daniel never spoke of that night in detail, not even to Lucas. But every time they drove past a children's hospital, or when Lucas asked why their house was small and plain compared to the mansions on television, Daniel would simply say, "Because we made a promise, buddy." And promises are heavier than houses. The truck slowed as they turned onto Maple Avenue. The new hospital rose ahead of them, modern but understated white brick wide glass windows, no towering logo or flashing sign. Just a simple brass plaque near the entrance that read, "Hawthorne Children's Hope, Riverbend, Illinois. For the children who need us." Most Daniel parked in the staff lot far from the main entrance. No valet. No security detail. Just a father and son stepping out into the rain. Inside, the lobby smelled faintly of antiseptic and fresh paint. A night shift receptionist glanced up, recognized Daniel immediately despite the faded hoodie and baseball cap, and gave him a small, knowing nod. She didn't say his name. She never did unless he asked. "Evening, Mr. Hawthorne," she whispered. "Evening. Sarah. We're just here to look around. Don't announce us." She smiled and went back to her paperwork. Daniel took Lucas's hand and led him down the hallway toward the pediatric oncology wing. The corridor was quiet, the kind of hush that settles over hospitals after midnight, only the soft beeps of monitors and the occasional murmur of nurses changing shifts. They paused outside the glass doors of the treatment lounge. Through the window, Daniel saw a woman kneeling on the floor beside a boy no older than 7. The child's head was smooth from chemotherapy, his small frame wrapped in a blanket. The woman was tying a bright blue knit cap gently around his scalp. "You're still the handsomest warrior in this room," she said, voice warm and steady. "Don't let anyone tell you different." The boy managed a tired smile. Daniel felt something shift inside his chest, something that hadn't moved in years. Lucas tugged at his sleeve. "Dad, my bear fell." The teddy had slipped from his grip and rolled under a nearby chair. Before Daniel could bend down, the woman looked up, noticed, and crossed the room in 3 quick steps. She picked up the bear, brushed off imaginary dust, and handed it back to Lucas with a gentle smile. "Here you go, sweetheart," she said. Then her gaze lifted to Daniel. "Your son." "Yes," Daniel answered, surprised at how easily the word came. "He's got a good dad," she said simply. "No flattery, no agenda, just truth." Daniel swallowed. It had been a long time since anyone had said those words to him without expecting something in return. The woman straightened, brushing a strand of auburn hair from her face. She wore navy scrubs, her name tag reading Emily Carter, R.N. Her eyes were tired but kind, the kind of tired that came from too many night shifts and not enough sleep. "I'm Emily," she said, offering her hand. "Daniel," he replied, shaking it. He didn't add Hawthorne. He didn't need to. Not yet. Lucas looked between them, then at the boy in the blanket. Is he okay? Emily glanced back at the child. He's tough, like a lot of kids here. Daniel watched her return to the boy, kneeling again, speaking softly. Something about the way she moved, unhurried present, reminded him of Claire, in the best possible way. For the first time in 7 years, Daniel Hawthorne didn't feel like a man carrying the weight of a promise alone. He felt like someone who might have found someone else willing to help carry it. Outside, the rain kept falling. Inside, a quiet promise was beginning to form, one that had nothing to do with money power or headlines, and everything to do with two people who had learned the hardest truth of all. Sometimes the most valuable thing you can give someone is simply showing up. Daniel didn't plan to return the next day. He told himself it was professional curiosity, checking the new infusion pumps, reviewing the staffing schedule, making sure the playroom had enough supplies for the opening. Legitimate reasons, necessary ones. But when he stepped through the glass doors of the pediatric oncology wing at 7:15 a.m., coffee in one hand and Lucas trailing behind with his backpack, he knew the truth. He was looking for Emily Carter. She was already there, clipboard in hand, moving between rooms with the quiet efficiency of someone who had long ago learned to carry grief without letting it slow her steps. Her auburn hair was pulled into a loose ponytail, a few strands escaping to frame her face. She wore the same navy scrubs as the night before, but today there was a small smile on her lips as she spoke to a teenage girl receiving her morning chemo. Daniel paused in the doorway, Lucas's hand in his, and watched. Emily noticed them almost immediately. Her smile widened, genuine and unguarded. Morning, Daniel. Morning, Lucas. She walked over, crouching to Lucas's level. Hey, buddy, did you sleep okay? Lucas nodded shyly. Yeah. Dad said we're going to see the new machines today. Cool ones, Emily said. Want to help me check if the superhero stickers are still on the IV poles? The kids love them. Lucas's eyes lit up. He glanced at Daniel for permission. Go ahead, Daniel said softly. Lucas ran off with Emily, who glanced back over her shoulder at Daniel with a small conspiratorial grin. You're welcome to join the sticker inspection team, Mr. Project Manager. He followed, because how could he not? The morning passed in a blur of small, ordinary moments that felt anything but ordinary. Emily showed Lucas how to carefully peel a Spider-Man sticker and place it on an IV stand without tearing the edges. She let him press the call button with the volume off so he could hear the soft chime. She answered every question he asked with patience and humor, never once talking down to him. Daniel watched from a few steps away, pretending to review a tablet he wasn't really reading. At one point, Emily knelt beside a 6-year-old girl named Sophie, who was too weak to sit up. Sophie's mother sat beside the bed, eyes red from crying. Emily didn't say much, just took the mother's hand, squeezed it once, and then began humming a soft lullaby while she adjusted the oxygen mask. Sophie's tiny fingers curled around Emily's. Daniel felt something crack open inside him, something he had carefully sealed after Claire's funeral. When the lunch hour came, Emily led them to the small staff break room. She pulled 2 sandwiches from the fridge, 1 turkey, 1 peanut butter and jelly, and set them on the table. I always make extra, she explained. Kids aren't the only ones who get hungry. Lucas devoured his sandwich like he hadn't eaten in days. Daniel ate more slowly, watching Emily. You do this every day? He asked quietly. Most days, she said. Night shifts are harder. You see the same kids at their worst, and you have to leave them at dawn wondering if they'll still be here when you come back. Daniel looked down at his coffee. I know that feeling. She studied him for a moment. You've lost someone. It wasn't a question. My wife, he said, 7 years ago. Complications from a heart condition. She was 38. Emily's expression softened. I'm sorry. He nodded once. He didn't say more. He didn't need to. After lunch, Lucas wanted to see the playroom. Emily walked them there, pointing out the mural of stars and planets painted on the ceiling. Kids say if they stare long enough, they can wish on the stars even during the day, she told Lucas. Lucas tilted his head back. Do you wish on them? Emily smiled. Every single shift. Daniel watched her profile, the way the light caught the faint freckles across her nose. He realized he had stopped pretending to check anything on his tablet. That evening, after Lucas was asleep in the hotel room, Daniel sat on the edge of the bed staring at the ceiling. He thought about Claire's last words. If you can, save other children. He had done that. He had poured everything, money, time, reputation, into keeping that promise. But tonight, for the first time in 7 years, he felt something else stirring. Not guilt, not duty, hope. The next morning, he found himself back at the hospital before visiting hours. Emily was in the hallway charting on a tablet. She looked up when she heard his footsteps. "You're becoming a regular," she teased gently. "Apparently I am." She set the tablet down. "Luke is coming today. He's with the sitter. I needed to talk to you." Emily's expression shifted, curious but cautious. Daniel took a breath. "I've been coming here a lot, more than I probably should. And it's not just about the hospital." She waited. "I like being around you," he said simply. "You make the world feel possible again. And I haven't felt that in a long time." Emily looked at him for a long moment. Then she smiled, small and real. "I like being around you too, Daniel, even if you do pretend to be interested in infusion pumps." He laughed quietly. The sound surprised him. "But I have to be honest," she continued. "I'm a single mom. My daughter Mia is 6. She's healthy now, but she was very sick for 3 years. Leukemia. I spent those years sleeping on hospital chairs, learning every side effect of every drug and promising myself I'd never let anyone else feel that alone. So I don't have room for games, or secrets, or anything that isn't real." Daniel met her eyes. "I don't want games." "Good," she said, "because neither do I." They stood there in the quiet hallway, the soft beeps of monitors drifting from nearby rooms. And for the first time since Claire died, Daniel Hawthorne didn't feel like a man trying to outrun grief. He felt like a man who might finally be ready to stand still long enough to let someone in. The storm arrived without warning. One moment, the sky over Riverbend was bruised purple. The next, wind howled through the streets, rattling windows and sending trash skittering across the parking lot. Inside, Hawthorne Children's Hope, the lights flickered, once, twice, then went out completely. Emily was midway through administering an evening dose of anti-nausea medication to a 12-year-old named Tyler when the power died. The infusion pump beeped once in alarm before falling silent. The room plunged into darkness, lit only by the faint green glow of backup battery indicators. "Stay calm, everyone," Emily called voice, steady even as her pulse jumped. She grabbed her flashlight from the nursing station and moved quickly down the hall. Generators should kick in any second. They didn't. She reached the main electrical room just as the backup batteries began to whine low, dangerous warnings that the system was straining. The pediatric oncology wing relied on constant power for ventilators, monitors, chemotherapy drips. Without it, children who were already fragile could deteriorate fast. Emily pulled out her phone. No signal. The storm had knocked out the cell towers, too. She ran back to the nurse's station, barking orders. "Manual pumps for anyone on continuous infusion, flashlights in every room. Call the on-call electrician now." 10 minutes passed, then 15. The whine of the batteries grew higher, more frantic. Emily stood in the hallway, hands shaking slightly as she tried to keep her breathing even. She thought of Mia at home with the sitter safe and warm. She thought of Tyler, who had just started to stabilize after 3 days of vomiting. She thought of every child in this wing who needed more time. Time the storm was trying to steal. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, fast, purposeful. Daniel appeared at the end of the hall, soaked through, hair plastered to his forehead, carrying a heavy black duffel bag and a portable generator slung over one shoulder. Rain dripped from his coat onto the linoleum. Emily stared. "Daniel." "I heard the power went out," he said, voice rough from the wind. "I was nearby." "You're drenched. I'll dry." He set the generator down and unzipped the duffel. Inside were extension cords, tools, and a backup battery pack. "Where's the main panel?" She didn't argue. She led him straight to the electrical room. For the next 40 minutes, Daniel worked in silence, kneeling on the cold floor, flashlight clamped between his teeth, hands moving with the sure precision of someone who had once rebuilt multi-million-dollar systems from scratch. He bypassed the failed circuit, rerouted power through the portable unit, and coaxed the main generator back online just as the last battery indicator flashed red. Lights flickered, then steadied. A soft cheer went up from the nurse's station. Daniel straightened, wiping sweat and rain from his face. His coat was filthy, his hands black with grease. He looked exhausted and utterly alive. Emily stood in the doorway, arms crossed, watching him. He met her eyes. "The kids okay?" "They're okay," she said quietly. "Thanks to you." He shook his head. "I just brought the tools." "You brought yourself," she corrected. "In the middle of a storm, when no one else could get here." He looked away suddenly, uncomfortable with the gratitude. They walked back to the hallway together. The lights were bright again, monitors humming softly. Nurses moved with renewed purpose. Somewhere down the corridor, a child laughed at something silly. Emily stopped outside the treatment lounge. Through the glass, she could see Tyler sitting up, sipping apple juice color slowly returning to his cheeks. Daniel stopped beside her. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly. She turned. "For what?" "For not telling you sooner." His voice was low. "About who I am, about the money, about everything." Emily studied him. Rain still dripped from the ends of his hair. His eyes were tired but clear. "I figured it out," she said. "After the first article, the photos, the headlines calling me a gold digger before they even knew my name." Daniel winced. "I'm not angry because you're rich," she continued. "I'm angry because you let me believe I was talking to someone ordinary. Someone who didn't have the power to change the whole damn world with a signature. And then the world turned on me for it. I never wanted that," he said. "I thought if you knew you'd see the money first, the name, the headlines. Not me." Emily looked at him for a long moment. Snow had started to fall outside the windows, soft and silent against the glass. "I don't need your money, Daniel," she said. "I don't need your hospitals or your foundation or your billions. What I need, what I've always needed, is someone who shows up when the lights go out. Someone who doesn't run when things get hard." She took a breath. "I've spent years protecting Mia, protecting these kids, protecting myself from people who promise things they can't deliver. I can't afford to let someone in who might disappear when the storm passes." Daniel stepped closer, not touching her. Not just close enough that she could feel the warmth of him through the damp coat. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "Not because of the storm. Not because of the headlines. Not because of anything. I've spent 7 years keeping a promise to my wife. I'm not about to break a new one to you." Emily searched his face. Then slowly she reached out and brushed a wet strand of hair from his forehead. "You're freezing," she murmured. "I'll live." She smiled, small, tentative, but real. "Come on," she said. "There's dry clothes in the staff locker room, and coffee. Lots of coffee." Daniel followed her down the hall, the sound of their footsteps soft against the hum of returning machines. Outside, the storm raged on. Inside, something quiet and steady had begun to take root. Something that didn't need money or power or promises written in contracts. Something that simply needed 2 people brave enough to stay. The morning after the storm dawned clear and cold, the kind of winter day that made every breath visible. Emily stood in the staff locker room, folding her scrubs into her bag. She had already submitted her leave request, effective immediately. The paperwork was on the director's desk. She couldn't stay. Not after the headlines, not after the calls from reporters asking if she had known all along, not after the whispers in the hallways that followed her like shadows. She had spent the night holding Mia close, explaining in simple words why Mommy might need a few days away from work. Mia had asked only one question: "Will the kids at the hospital be okay without you?" Emily hadn't had an answer. Now she zipped her bag, took a deep breath, and turned toward the door. Daniel was waiting in the hallway. He looked like he hadn't slept dark circles under his eyes, still wearing the same damp coat from the night before. When he saw her, he straightened. "Emily," he said quietly. "Don't do this!" She paused, hand on the strap of her bag. "I already did." He stepped closer. "I know what the board is saying. I know what the lawyers are advising. I know they want me to distance myself from you to protect the foundation." Emily looked at him steadily. "Then do it." "I can't." She let out a small, tired laugh. "Daniel, you built an empire to save children. You can't risk it for for me. "I'm not risking it for you," he said. "I'm risking it for what this place stands for. If I let them force me to choose between the woman I love and the promise I made to my wife and to every child who walks through these doors, then what was the point of building any of it?" Emily's breath caught. He continued, voice low and steady. "I've spent 7 years hiding behind money and good works because it was easier than feeling anything. But you made me feel again. And I'm not going to let anyone take that away. Not the board, not the press, not even myself." She searched his face. "What are you going to do?" "I'm going to tell the truth," he said. "All of it!" The press conference was scheduled for 11 a.m. in the hospital's small auditorium. No podium, no prepared statement. Just a single chair and a microphone. Reporters filled the seats, local, national, even a few international ones who had flown in overnight. Cameras flashed, phones recorded. Daniel walked in alone. He wore a plain gray sweater and jeans. No tie, no entourage, just him. He sat down, looked directly into the cameras, and began. "My name is Daniel Hawthorne. 7 years ago, my wife Claire died in a Chicago hospital while our son Lucas was 3 years old. Before she passed, she asked me to save other children if I could. That's why I sold everything I owned and built Hawthorne Children's Hope, a network of free hospitals for kids with serious illnesses. No one pays. No one is turned away." He paused, letting the words settle. "I came to Riverbend to oversee the opening of our 21st hospital. While I was here, I met someone. Emily Carter. She's a pediatric nurse. She didn't know who I was. She didn't care about my money or my name. She cared about the kids, about showing up every night shift even when it hurt, about making sure no child felt alone." His voice thickened. "I fell in love with her. And I didn't tell her the truth about who I was because I was afraid if she knew she'd see the billionaire first and the man second. I was wrong." A murmur rippled through the room. "Yesterday, the press published photos and stories accusing Emily of being a gold digger. They're wrong. She's the best person I've ever known. And if this foundation can't exist because its founder dared to love someone who doesn't need his money, then it doesn't deserve to exist." He looked straight into the main camera. "I'm stepping down as chairman effective immediately. I will not allow this organization to be used as leverage against the woman I love or the children we serve. The hospitals will continue. I'll make sure of it, but not at the cost of anyone's dignity." He stood. That's all. He walked out without taking questions. The room erupted. Outside, Emily waited in the hallway near the staff exit. She had watched the live stream on her phone. When Daniel emerged, she was there. He stopped when he saw her. "You didn't have to do that," she said quietly. "I did," he replied. "I should have done it sooner." She stepped closer. "You just gave up control of everything you built." "I gave up control of something that was never supposed to control me," he said. "I kept my promise to Claire, and now I'm making a new one to you. To us." Emily reached up and touched his cheek. "You're an idiot," he smiled, small, tired, real. "I know." She leaned in and kissed him soft, brief but sure. When she pulled back, she whispered, "Thank you for choosing me. I should have chosen you the first time I saw you kneel down and tie that cap on that little boy's head," he said. They stood there in the quiet hallway, the storm outside finally gone. Behind them, the hospital hummed back to life, monitors, beeping, nurses, laughing, children's voices drifting down the corridor. And for the first time in 7 years, Daniel Hawthorne didn't feel like he was carrying a promise alone. He felt like he had finally found someone to share it with. 1 year later, the sun rose over the new Hawthorne Children's Hope facility in Albuquerque, New Mexico, the 30th hospital in the network. The building was modest by design, soft adobe walls, wide windows letting in desert light, a central courtyard filled with raised garden beds where children could plant flowers even from wheelchairs. No marble columns, no gold lettering. Just a quiet sign at the entrance that read the same as every other location. For the children who need us. Most Emily stood beside Daniel on the small stage wearing a simple cream dress and a name tag that read Emily Carter Hawthorne. Co-founder, Heart of Hope. Division. She had accepted the role 6 months after the press conference, not as a favor, not as a title to appease the board, but because she had earned it. She now oversaw the human side of every hospital, training staff in compassionate care, creating support programs for families, ensuring no child ever felt like just another chart. Daniel wore a dark suit, but no tie. Lucas, now 11, stood between them in a navy blazer, holding Mia's hand. Mia, 7 years old and full of energy, wore a yellow sundress and kept tugging at her brother's sleeve to point at the balloons floating above the courtyard. The ribbon cutting was small. No celebrities, no politicians, just doctors, nurses, former patients, and families who had once walked through these doors afraid they would never walk out. When Emily stepped forward to cut the ribbon, she paused, scissors in hand, and looked at Daniel. "This isn't just a building," she said into the microphone voice carrying across the quiet crowd. "It's a promise kept, and it's only possible because someone dared to believe that every child deserves a chance regardless of what their parents can pay." She cut the ribbon. Applause rose soft but warm. Later that evening, in the same courtyard, now lit by strings of soft white lights, Daniel and Emily were married. Only 50 guests attended, nurses who had worked night shifts with Emily, doctors who had fought for children. No one else would take parents whose sons and daughters were still alive because of the hospitals, and the children themselves. Some in wheelchairs, some bald from treatment, all smiling. Lucas stood beside his father, holding the rings. When the officiant asked who gave this woman, Lucas stepped forward without hesitation. "I do," he said clearly. "And Mia does too." Mia, standing on a small stool so she could reach, nodded vigorously. "We both do." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Daniel and Emily exchanged vows under the stars. "I promise to show up," Daniel said, voice steady. "On the hard nights, on the good ones. When the world is loud and when it's quiet, I promise to love you not because of what you do, but because of who you are, the woman who makes sure no child ever feels alone." Emily's eyes shimmered. "I promise to stand beside you," she replied. "Not behind you, not in front of you, beside you, to remind you that saving lives isn't about money or power, it's about heart. And I promise to keep my heart open to you every single day." They kissed. Lucas and Mia cheered the loudest. Weeks later, Daniel quietly dedicated the original Chicago hospital, the one where Claire had died, to her name. The dedication ceremony was private, just Emily, Daniel, Lucas, Mia, and a few of Claire's old friends. Emily cut the new ribbon outside the entrance. A small plaque was unveiled, "Claire Hawthorne. Wing in memory of a mother who believed every child deserves to live." Daniel spoke briefly. "Claire asked me to save other children, if I could," he said. "With Emily by my side, I've kept that promise and turned it into something bigger than I ever imagined." "She would have loved you," he told Emily quietly afterward. "She would have loved how fiercely you loved these kids." Emily squeezed his hand. "I think she already does." The network continued to grow quietly, steadily. New centers opened recovery programs for children, post-treatment educational support, so they never fell behind, in school family housing, so parents didn't have to choose between rent and staying near their child. Daniel and Emily no longer lived in a mansion. They lived in a modest house near the Riverbend Hospital, close enough to walk to work, close enough for Lucas and Mia to ride bikes to school together. Every Christmas, they sent handwritten letters to every family who had ever been treated in any Hawthorne facility. The letters never mentioned statistics or expansions. They simply said, "We're still here. We're still open. We're still keeping the promise no child fights alone." And in every hospital lobby, the same photograph hung: Daniel and Emily sitting on the front steps of the Riverbend Hospital. Lucas and Mia squeezed between them, arms around each other. In the background, children played in the courtyard, some bald, some in wheelchairs, all laughing. Beneath the photo, a simple line: "They didn't just build hospitals. They built a world where children could dream again." Years later, when people asked how it all began, Daniel would smile and say, "It started with a promise in a storm, and it never ended because two people decided to keep showing up." And somewhere, in the quiet spaces between beeps and footsteps, Claire's voice still echoed softly, "Save other children." They had, and they always would.